been participating in my mini-series on European Jewish history, this quote is for you. When France sneezes, all of Europe catches a cold. This phrase has been adapted to say America and even to say China. But it was coined by Clemens Wenzelforst von Metternich, a Prussian statesman during the Napoleonic Age. He actually helped keep Western Europe from erupting into full-out war in the 19th century. Jumping to the 1960s and 70s, Edward Lorenz introduced the idea of chaos theory to the world's discourse and used a metaphor in his paper. Does a flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? This butterfly effect metaphor filtered into pop culture in the film Havana, when Robert Redford's character says, a butterfly can flutter its wings over a flower in China and cause a hurricane in the Caribbean. And the scientists can even calculate the odds, the character says. But they can't. In the same year that the movie came out, Lorenz published a book called The Essence of Chaos, where he says that nature's interdependent chain of cause and effect are too complex to disentangle. So we cannot say precisely which butterfly, if any, may have created a given storm. Moreover, back in 1972, Lorenz said, we don't even know if the butterfly. It's impossible for us to know. Maybe the butterfly prevented the tornado, using his metaphor. Many of us may be familiar with the term blue ribbon panels, defined by Wikipedia as a panel or committee of experts tasked with investigation, often into governmental actions. The term blue ribbon actually is quite old, coming from medieval England, when people would be given blue ribbons as achievement awards. Determining the cause and effect of the universe's happenings is so desirable, yet it's so far out of our reach. And when doing something empirically in the real world doesn't work, we humans often retreat into the mythic and imaginative world. This is not a bad thing, as I often like to teach, because it teaches us about things and about ourselves. We just have to be very careful not to become too literalist or too fundamentalist, and to start treating our mythical thinking as empirical fact. This coming Wednesday and Thursday is Tisha B'Av, commemorating the destructions of the first and second temple and many other calamities that have befallen the Jewish people. It is hard to know the exact cause of the destruction and the subsequent atrocities against the Jews. Again, there are full courses that you can take about Second Temple Judaism and just how that the great Roman army decided that the Jewish people and this little backwater town, Jerusalem, was a thorn in its side and needed to be destroyed. In some ways, it was just the chaos of the world. But the ancient rabbis hated chaos like we do. So they put themselves at ease with their mythical thinking by blaming their own actions, causing the destruction of the temple. And if you look at the tractate Tanit, you will see the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. How does the story go? It says that there was a rich man who had a friend named Kamsa and an arch enemy named Bar Kamsa. And back then, they didn't have Evite and other things like that. When you wanted to invite people, you sent messengers to go and tell them that they're invited to a party. So the rich man had a party and put Kamsa on his invitation list. But the messenger messed up and went and invited Bar Kamsa to the party. So Bar Kamsa shows up, and the rich man is so incensed that his enemy is there. And he goes to Bar Kamsa and says, get out of my house in public. Bar Kamsa does not want to be embarrassed. And so he implores the rich man, let me stay. I will pay for my food. And the rich man says, no, get out. And Bar Kamsa says, I'll pay for half the party. Just let me stay for the party. And the rich man says, no. I mean, you know this is a mythical story because it takes place in threes. And the Bar Kamsa then says, I will pay for the entire party. Just let me stay so that I'm not embarrassed. And the rich man says, no, get out of my house. And Bar Kamsa leaves. He's incensed because several great rabbis are there, present at the party, witnessing this whole exchange without intervening one bit. And so Bar Kamsa wants to get even against the rabbis. And he's quite learned in his Jewish law. And so he takes an animal and he puts a small blemish in its ear, knowing that the rabbis will notice it, but no one else does. And he goes to the Roman emperor and says, the Jews are rebelling. And he says, how do you know that? How is that going to happen? He says, I want you to take this animal to them. And notice they're not going to offer it in your name. For the rabbis would offer offerings in the names of the non-Jewish rulers to appease them. And so the emperor goes to Jerusalem with this animal, with the small blemish, and says, please offer this animal on behalf of me so you can show your loyalty. And so the rabbis begin to examine the animal as they're supposed to do before offering it as an offering. And they notice the small nick in the ear. And several rabbis start a debate. Should we offer it? Because otherwise the emperor is going to be mad at us. And others are saying, no, the rules say you must be strict. Do not offer the offering. That side wins. And they refuse to offer the offering. And of course, the Roman emperor is incensed and starts a war that causes the destruction. And from this, the rabbis teach that it was sinat chinam, baseless hatred, or really acting upon our hatred, that caused the destruction of the temple. Just a mythic story. But the rabbis really want us to think about is our actions, even in the case of chaos, even in times when we aren't really in control, that we have to think about our actions, especially leaders have to think about their actions, to be as careful as possible. I've lost track of the Daf Yomi, especially during this pandemic, but I still get the emails. And so one page caught me this past week, page 139 of the Tractate Shabbat, which again talks about the idea of if you sneeze, France or the world catches a cold. Same idea. And says when a calamity is felt, what are you supposed to do? Rabbi Moshe ben Elisha says, if you see a generation experiencing many troubles, go and examine the judges of Israel. Any calamity that comes to the world comes due to the judges of Israel acting corruptly. I read a commentary on this page by Rabbi Seth Goren, and he writes, as much as this outcome may be unfair, it's hard to argue with the underlying truth, which speaks to our day as well. The public good rests in the hands of people we hope make wise and fair decisions for everyone's benefit. And firstly, leaders' failures, whether intentional or accidental, can bring about comprehensive disaster. Leaders must always feel deep solidarity with their constituents. The rabbis actually found an illustration of this idea in Moses' leadership during a war with the Amalekites. When the community is immersed in suffering, a person may not say, I will go to my home and I will eat and drink, and peace be upon you, my soul. Rather, a person should be distressed together with the community, as we found with Moses, our teacher, that he was distressed together with the community during the war with Amalek. Because it says in the Torah, Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat upon it. But didn't Moses have one pillow or one cushion to sit upon? Why was he forced to sit on a rock? Rather, Moses said as follows, since the Jewish people are immersed in suffering, I too will be with them in suffering. As much as I am able, although I am not participating in the fighting. And the Talmud continues, anyone who is distressed together with the community will merit in seeing the consolation of the community. And as many different troubles roil us of the pandemic, as well as the various protests going on, and unfortunately, where the government that is sending out its troops to attack those peaceful protesters. I think of the mayor of Portland, Oregon, who went and sat amongst the people and literally got tear gassed. When the blue ribbon panels are established to look at all levels of leadership after this COVID-19 pandemic, I think we will discover that the best leaders are the ones who deeply identify with those who are leading, taking responsibility for the results of their actions and own the adverse effects of the mistakes they are going to inevitably make. When we sneeze, having enough masks for ourselves alone isn't enough. We must all mask up and take responsibility for our actions, sometimes taking drastic compromise for the sake of saving lives. May this week of Tisha B'Av be one of commemoration, but really finally of comfort and hope for all. And let us all say, Amen.